Hey, hello.
Hi, hi, Vinay. Vinay,
Yes.
yeah, it is
Can
a
you hear
bit
me
cold.
okay? What's that?
Yeah, bit cold here. So I'm using a muffler around my neck to keep it warm.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just rehearsing a bit,
Mhm.
just prepping my slides. So next, I want to introduce my second co-host, Mark Crosby. Mark is joining us from the revenue side of the system. He leads Digital Rebels and works directly with B2B sales teams, navigating growth, complexity, and strategy drift. He's also operated inside of large corporations like BASF, where execution breakdowns didn't show up immediately, but compound quietly. Mark has seen how strategy looks clean on a slide and then gets distorted out in the field. So when we talk about signals forming before results move, he's seen that play out in real pipelines. Mark, thank you for being here. Thanks, Mark. With that, let's begin. Let's start seeing some friction. The value is in how you see and name what's already happening. If you leave with better questions and clear language, this time worked. Mark and Cyril will help us ground this in lived experience as we go, not conclusions, not recommendations, just pattern recognitions. And if something feels familiar, we'll stay with it. So, forecast reconcile. Meetings are happening, nothing is obviously broken. If the board asked today, the numbers would look stable. And yet, something already feels tight. Mark, Cyril, before the numbers move, how do leaders usually describe this moment, if they describe it at all? Cyril, I'll start with you first. How do they describe it? It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. None of these problems are problems on their own. These appear before the results move, not after. So let's go through this. Subtle drag, small resistance starts to compound. The delay, the progress slows over time. It's like leaving the handbrake on in your car. Rework, decisions return, not resolve. And explanation, people explain before measuring. These appear before the results move, not after. And we're not labeling causes yet. We're not diagnosing. So, Mark, I'd like you to give me from a revenue perspective, when pipelines start feeling less predictable, what have you seen, or which of these do you usually see first in the field? Thank you. How's this going? Hello?
Yeah, those are nice and valuable questions. That this answer of these questions is going to bring value.
Yes.
Definitely, Vinay. And those are kind of recognized, so they can recognize this kind of scenario happens in mid-market organizations.
Yeah, one thing I need you to do is I have not been able to get Mark at Digital Rebels Consulting. I have not been able to make him a contributor. For some reason, the system won't allow me to do it. I don't know why. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen.
We can directly send him and the link.
Yes, but
Come, Vinay. I'm just allowing him. Yeah, here is Mark. Vinay.
yep.
Vinay.
Yep. Hey, Mark, how you doing? Mark, can you hear me? Okay. You should be able to join as a contributor now. I just sent you a request. Hey, Mark, you got mute on. Hey there.
There we go.
There. Fantastic. Hey, Mark, meet Halal. Halal's He's the one who got all the stuff set up. I just get to wear the fancy bells and all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Hello, meet Mark. Mark, meet hello.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I already know about Mark. I'm a little bit a fan of him, so I know him already.
It's good to that you have some context there. It says we have a viewer that left. And what do you all see on screen right now? Do you all see?
The numbers only make sense after it's too late.
But you don't see our the view of us, right?
I don't see you, but I see your web browser.
And so can we also exclude the address bar and browser's other part and keep only the canvas only? Is it possible?
I'm not sure I'm following what you're saying. So if I start advancing through these slides, you still don't see us, right?
No. I see you on the Google Meet, but not on the presentation mode, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, so in the Google Meet itself, you can actually adjust that view, right? But you can't actually see me. How the heck do I do that?
And also, if we can hide the taskbar as well as the bookmarks on the browser.
Yeah.
Well, how about this? If I start to speak, does it change now what the spotlight is on? Or
nope, looks exactly the same. Are you trying to be on your screen?
Well, I mean, I'd like to be able to see them to be able to see our faces while we're making comments or saying things. And clearly, I'm missing something here as far as how to do that.
So tiled option maybe show us, and we can also exclude.
Now I can see us on the presentation screen.
Yeah, just a moment here. Let me see if I can adjust this so it's dynamic. So that should then wait, how did I get this working last time?
Adjust auto spotlight.
We can pin and unpin. Okay, and there is another guest.
Yep, it's David.
Yes, adjust.
All right.
Yeah. Make him a contributor. Oh, I'm making him a
No, you don't need to do it. Hey, David, thanks for coming in. And we are trying to figure out how to get this thing working. Some technology issue here. I'm not figuring something out. But David, if you can do me a favor, just as you're chiming in, I'm assuming you can see the Q&A. If you go to the bottom right corner, you should see in Google Meet, you should see a 3x3 matrix, 9 dots, and you should be able to see the Q&A there to be able to answer questions. Can you ask questions in there for me, David? Try that out. And hello, I will allow you to keep bringing people in. Just bring them in as viewers. And let's see, I got in. Thanks.
David said he does not have access to speak, but can ask questions in the Q&A.
Perfect. That's good. That's why I want to do it, because I got a bunch of people who may not want to. You're more than welcome to ask questions throughout the course of this, David. After we can, David, we can follow up a little bit more afterwards. Feel free to use that Q&A at any point in time, though. Good. Gosh, every webinar attendance software has got different layouts and everything else. There's always Always something to get used to, I guess. Mark, how you doing? How you doing today? Well, we have Cyril who should be joining us shortly, and we'll get ourselves rolling then.
Good. I'm doing well.
Good. Happy to hear that. Happy to hear that. Looks like we've got Zay
Our
and
guest,
Cyril.
Vinay.
Yes.
Guest are appearing now. They're joining.
Yeah, that's right. Great. I'm going to go on mute for a couple moments here until we get ourselves started. Let's give it another minute or two, and we'll get ourselves started for the session. We got 12 o'clock. I'm going to give another minute just because sometimes people have challenges getting in for whatever technical or other reasons. Let's give it another minute and we'll get ourselves started. We got a lot of stuff we can get through today and some great insights and hopefully good use of time. All right, let's go ahead and get ourselves rolling here. It's 12:01. Hopefully more people will be joining in. We had quite a few registrations for this. But let's go ahead and get ourselves started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Vinay Raman. I lead Carmo, a friction analytics firm focused on execution risk in scaling companies. Before we get too far into this, I want to set a little bit of the container for the session, what it's going to look like. And this session is anonymized. For anybody who comes in, you have the ability to ask questions, but everything has been scrubbed of names. You're more than welcome to add your name in. But if you look at Google Meet down in the bottom right corner, you should see a 3x3 set of 9 dots. If you go there, there's a Q&A section. You can always ask questions throughout the course of this. I'll come back and revisit them so that we make sure we can answer questions that people have. But there's a little checkbox there saying anonymized. If you want to stay anonymous, check that box and they'll know who it is that's answering. Now, we're not examining any specific company today. All the names have been taken off and all the details have been scrubbed. This is an observe-only session. There's no fixing, diagnosing, or judging today. As the questions arise for you, feel free to type them into the Q&A, and you can get them again through that 3x3 matrix down in the bottom right corner, going to the Q&A section. I want to be a little explicit here in terms of what you're going to get from this hour. You're not going to be leaving with any frameworks, dashboards, or action steps. But what you will be getting is the ability to detect margin risk earlier, not in a spreadsheet, but in conversation. You'll leave with language for tension that has not shown up yet in an organization, and definitely hasn't shown up in the numbers. And it'll start to give you a clear explanation for why financial clarity often arrives after the decision window closes. And if this works, if this session works well for you, you'll start trusting your early signals instead of always having to wait for proof. Looking for tools, this isn't that. If you're looking to be able to see further, earlier, that's what this is. So this isn't a critique of finance, and it isn't a critique of leadership. It's about timing and when clarity arrives versus when decisions are still available. And going back to the title, the numbers only make sense after it's too late. We're going to look at what forms before the results move. Not solve it, just see it. So for those who don't know me, my work focuses on operational friction inside scaling firms, especially the kind that shows up in margin and revenue before anyone can clearly explain it. Some people call it gut feel. At Karma, we map that execution risk, not culture, not personality. I have two people that I'm going to be having go through this session with me today. First, I'm going to start with Mark Crosby. Mark is joining us from the revenue side of the system. He leads Digital Rebels and works directly with B2B sales teams navigating growth, complexity, and strategy drift. He's also operated inside of large organizations like BASF, where executions break down. They don't show up immediately, but compound quietly. Mark has seen how strategy looks on a clean on a slide and then gets distorted on the field. So when we talk about signals forming before the results move, Mark, you've seen that play out in real pipelines. Mark, how are you today? Thanks for joining.
Doing fantastic. Thank you for having me on today. I'm excited to hear more about what you'll talk about today. But as you've already said, things always sound good when they're in a conference room, when they're on a PowerPoint, but that execution is a whole different animal. And so, as far as trying to detect where those issues might be down the line, there's a lot of different ways to do that. But typically what I see, what you've seen over many, many years, is that execution kind of, falls off a little bit once it gets handed from one person to another, cascaded throughout the organization, and that friction shows up in different parts of the business.
We'll call that the drift. I also have another co-observer with me today, Cyril Moreau. He brings lived executive experience. He's operated in environments where forecast credibility matters, where small misalignments compound quickly. He understands what it feels like when something feels stable on paper, but tight operationally. And he's here to share some pattern recognition as well, not conclusions or advice. Cyril, welcome to the show. How are you today? You're on mute, by the way.
Sorry, here we go. Sorry.
No problem.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see you guys and to meet you guys, Mark. It's good noise to my ears. Everything I'm hearing so far, in the last 5 minutes, misalignment, CEO saying something, and then when you go down to the execution, usually it's like someone who wants to cross the ocean and someone's just to be on the river. So usually that's why I said that's my French sense of humor. Sorry guys, but yeah, I've seen that so many times, and again, so many times people say, oh, in the US it's this, in the UK it's this, and da 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 da. Yesterday I had a long meeting with someone in the GCC region, so very far away from us as we speak anyway. But I can tell you exactly the same thing: friction, misalignment, execution issues. So language doesn't matter, geography doesn't matter, always the same issues anyway. So, and that's why we've got a job to do anyway to help all these SMBs to be back on the track or help them to go to the next level. There we go.
Yeah. Thank you, Cyril. And with that, let's begin this journey, this new set of lenses, and let's start seeing some friction. So the value is in how you see and name what's already happening. Again, lots of people call this gut feel. And if you leave with better questions and clearer language, then this session will have worked for you. Mark and Cyril today are going to help me as we ground this in lived experience as we go. And not conclusions, not recommendations, just this idea of pattern recognition. And if something feels familiar, stay with it for a couple moments just to make sure we ground this in some reality. So, as we start to dig in here, forecasts reconcile, meetings are happening, nothing is obviously broken, but the board asked today the numbers would look stable. Let me share my slides here so you can start to see what I'm seeing. I realized I didn't click that button. So again, forecasts, meetings, everything's working the way it's supposed to on the surface. Nothing seems broken. But if the board asked today what's going on, everything looks fantastic, stable. And yet something feels tight already. So question, Cyril, maybe I'll start with you. Before the numbers move, How do leaders usually describe this moment, if they describe it at all? What does that feel like? What is the language that they use?
So you've got two different, for me, two different things. When you're talking about forecast and everything, people will say, I will blame the economics. I will blame the market. I will blame, and I'm from the tech. So I don't know, Mark, if you're from the tech as well, but I'm kind of, my background is tech. So when you've got the sales going to the delivery people, so what we call at the time professional services, now is global delivery, whatever. And then you've got the customer success and customer support now. And it's like, oh, sales being selling something doesn't exist on the product. And then the implementation say, yeah, the product, features missing and this and that. So, and then after, you see the economics, and, the economy is not good in the country. So people are not buying, or they want to discount. And you've got all these kind of different views. Everyone's I would say everyone's got his own truth, and that's true. I mean, could be the product, could be the sales, could be the delivery people, it could be the support is not doing his job, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if the forecast, what we call a forecast, today I'm seeing more pipeline than forecast, and that's my issue in the world today. And I'm sure Mark has got some even better example on that. But I've seen the pipeline of one of our clients. I won't name it for obvious reason, but 2026, we are in 2026. They presented to the board a week ago a pipeline for 2026. I mean, in my world, 20 years ago, I would be fired to do so. The board pipeline? No, I need a forecast, meaning pretty much the week and the day would be signed up, because your customers, who's got the check, when the budget would be signed off, et cetera, and their needs. Because when they're buying something, they've got a challenge, you understand the challenge, you've got a solution for these guys. If you don't understand that in your client, whoever they are, it doesn't matter the industry and the geography, again, something is not right. So again, it's misalignment between your customers and yourself. And that's why the speech is completely different, because the sales will come and say, hey, this is, what I think, and da. And then the clients got a different view. And that's where, again, execution, misalignment, misunderstanding, that's the old story today. My 3 minutes on the case anyway. So, Mark?
Well, Mark, I'm going to come back to you in a second, because I do want to make sure we get to sharing the whole journey here, right? Because if you look at this slide here, none of these problems are problems just by themselves, but these all appear after the results move, not after. Subtle drag, right? Delay, rework, explanation, right? We're not labeling causes yet. We're not diagnosing. So Mark, from the revenue side, when pipelines start feeling less predictable, which of these usually do you see in the field? Which one starts to appear? What starts to show up?
Well, it usually shows up when I think it's too late. And that's where you kind of get to the very end there as far as the explanation. So, the value typically is supposed to be delivered up front with your clients and your customers. And typically, if you don't execute that correctly throughout the funnel, then you start to get subtle drag, and those friction points are there and they should be noticed. And sometimes, everyone's bogged down with the day-to-day. Everyone's typically managing quarter to quarter with internal politics and things like that. But then we get into this very end of the phase where, we missed our numbers, margins were eroded. Now it's a problem, but a lot of those problems were very far upstream and probably could have been diagnosed before it actually hit your bottom line. So to answer your question, there are these subtle signals, red flags along the way. And it's whether we take the time to step back from time to time, not at the end of the quarter, to see if there's opportunities for process improvement, for coaching, and to make sure that we're actually still on track to meet the goals, whether it's quarter to quarter, midpoint, or even year over year.
So I'd like to ask anybody who's listening in, remember, you can kind of go down to that bottom right corner there, and there's the three dots matrix, 3 dots square there. You can go to Q&A if you've got some questions or some thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Subtle drag, delay, rework, explanation. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4 of these? Where do you start to see this showing up in the organization for yourself? And I think we've got some people who've responded. I would love to kind of see what people are saying. So let me keep moving forward here. So this now might be the hardest instruction in this room, in this conversation. Just notice. We don't want to take action. We just want to notice, right? Cyril, in your experience, when leaders skip this pause, what tends to happen next? Where do they go?
There is an expression in French, but I won't tell you just to be nice to the people. But usually the wall is getting closer and closer and closer. I mean, the thing is, usually when you've got that is like Mark was saying, it should be diagnosed a long time ago. I mean, a few months back or a few quarters back, because if you miss, it's too late. When it's too late, it's too late. Then the people will do, C-level would say, okay, so we've got margin is going down, the revenue is not at the level we want, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. EBITDA is in the trash. So then they took action. But took action is too late. So usually it's a human being. So I will move this one, I will get someone else in place, or so for me is and again, so I don't know what happened in the last 10 years or so, but I remember 20, 25 years ago, we all have to go through sales cycle, define every single step, what is the percentage, understand our client, what they do, when they do it, and why they do it, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, it's a lot of communication, diagnostic, maybe different language. And I'm not talking about a language like, French, English, Spanish, Chinese or whatever, but the language. We need to speak the language that our customers understand. And when we understand the pain point, usually that's where you clear the sky, kind of. Very simple for me. Simple. I'm not as simple to do, but it's you understand the pain points, you've got a solution, and the way they are. You need to know your customers inside and outside. And I do think that that's not the case today. Today is I had a call yesterday, and again, I'm not mentioning the name, but he said, I need a fractional CRO because my VP is not selling. But I need to sell now. So can we look at your sales marketing machine, your processes, everything, so we can diagnose what is wrong, what doesn't work for you, what it should work, etc. No, I need to sell now. Sorry, I'm the wrong person. I don't know how to do that.
What I'm hearing here is it's systemic. It's not the individual. It's the system is where there's an issue causing problems, right? So here's what I'd like to do, right? I want to kind of get you to this point where you'll be able to see this again, right? We're starting to build those lenses for you. So what we're doing here is talking about how a single signal spreads across the entire system as the scale increases. And Mark, I want to kind of come to you on this, right? From this revenue side, from what you've seen in your experientially, where have you seen one small issue quietly turn into a system-wide problem? This is part of what we're talking right here. Quietly turn into the system-wide problem without anyone choosing for that to happen. It just kind of sneaks up on us.
Yeah, I've been taking some notes here as Cyril was talking, and even looking at some of the comments in the Q&A here. But a lot of these signals start internally, and let's just take price negotiations as one topic that typically comes up at any point in any sales cycle, whether it's the beginning, middle, and most typically at the very end. And typically, I think when we're negotiating price, a lot of those times we're negotiating price internally. And we're not understanding that some of this friction between product and marketing and sales is happening on a repeat basis. And we don't really do anything about it, right? We get a price and then we go to the customer and we present it, and maybe we win, lose the deal, or maybe we're discounting. We win the business, maybe we lose the business, and then we do nothing about it. But there's that friction that's always happening in these deals, whether you're arguing with your senior vice presidents or your marketing team about price. And then these things start to percolate and come up on the customer side of it. And then you lose a little bit of credibility, maybe a little bit of trust, and maybe even some pricing power. And as the comment in the Q&A was, it kind of starts to result in churn, as far as just your customers are now going to start to leave you for one reason or another. But a lot of these things can be detected, I think, initially internally, as far as having alignment on what the price should be, price bands, what's our top and what's our bottom. What are we willing to give up in order to get something? And a lot of those discussions can happen in the beginning before it starts to show up on the customer side and before it's even too late as far as losing a customer, which is a whole nother set of problems as far as trying to gain new business.
Agreed. So yes, you're right. I got kind of neglected the Q&A here. So John Lane said he was talking about what he sees. Depends on the industry. In SaaS, I pay attention to the churn, as that is the canary in the coal mine. We're talking about that graph that shows up what are the signals. Agree, John. That is a very good point. I also see here from David Parsons, an example I've seen in clients is the subtle drag that comes up in turnover, which can cause financial impact to recruiting, job ads, etc. Wherever the biggest financial impact would be in the overloaded senior leader who has to take on the excess workload, lowering their performance. You know, all really, really good points. So I want to keep moving us forward here to be able to see this so you get those new set of lenses we're developing, right? Kind of trying to tune them in and focus them. So what we're going to do next, very shortly after this slide, is we're going to show you, this is the first signal. This is one individual view. Again, this is not about right or wrong. It's not about performance. It's just the signal. Look, as a person who's very analytical myself, I'm always trying to look for the numbers and what are the details. What do I do next? I want to make a big point here, right? This isn't evidence. It's just a number. It doesn't have any context around it. It's just signal. So I want to give you this so you can take a look at it. This is one leader's view of the system. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's not performance. It's just their perception. It's the assumptions that they're bringing to the table every day when they operate. This is how the system feels from where they sit. Cyril, let me walk through this real quick, and I'd love to hear from you. Right? We can look at this and we see decision ownership. Let me move my mouse over here. Decision ownership, escalation paths, load, coordination. Those or an assumption alignment is something that this particular executive or leader feels much more maturity or strength, or believes much more in the system. Whereas cross-team handoffs and rework loops and process efficiency, priority stability. This is an illustration of kind of how they assume the system is operating today, and that's what they see. In the executive seat, Cyril, how often does a view like this get dismissed as just perspective, not consequential, not something that really matters?
That's a good question. I mean, decision ownership coming from a CEO, C-level makes sense because that's the way they're starting. And usually is going with the, it's on board with the assumption. Then the escalation path, that's where the communication or misunderstanding or the diagnosis should start, because for me, that's the three main issues here. I mean, the three main, not issues, but where the problem could be. Assumption, do we have the same? Are we understand the same? Because we all starting from something. And again, like you said, it's a view. So as a CEO, my assumption is this, is X, Y, Z. I own this piece of the business, and then I'm going down to my first line and second line, et cetera, et cetera. And usually the assumption is the first thing I will look at, because we all starting from a different assumption, because it's a view. Again, my view as a CEO, or my view as a VP sales, talking about revenue, or my view as a VP delivery, which is again something different because I'm going, is a cascade below the CEOs anyway. And then the escalation path, meaning we were talking about pricing. It's kind of funny because sales-wise, when you're starting pricing, usually you've got the room of negotiation, like we said, okay? So you can go down by 5%, 10%, 20%. I remember, competing with SAP, and I was in Thomson Reuters. It was like, I'm going there. They think I'm going down by 50%, but it's not right because they don't know my public pricing. And the thing is, usually what you do, you're bringing your C-level at the end when everything has been done, and then he can do the big discount if he can anyway. So the thing is, for me, is make sure all the assumption is aligned. Everyone knows the assumption where we're starting from. The ownership is very important for me, because if there is no ownership in any kind of levels, then you're going, again, everyone is going in a different direction. We don't know that, but it could be. And then the escalation path, because you need to know that your peers and then your boss, I should say, managers anyway, should be in the same, knowing that if something happen, you will knock at the door and say, I need help. And for me, that's where the most important. The rest is, I'm not saying it's not important, but that's the 3 points I will be very focused on.
So
I'm trying to be short, sorry.
I appreciate that. And here's what I'd like to hear from sort of, David, John, some others who've already chimed in and put some comments into the Q&A. I'd love to hear what you're seeing when you look at this, right? What does it mean to you? And there's a reason I'm asking you to do that. I'd love for you to share with me, what are you seeing out of this visual here as you've been hearing kind of Cyril talk through this and as you digest this? I'm going to give you a couple more moments here to kind of digest a thought, and then I'm going to move on a little bit here so that you guys can see what happens next. All right. Okay. So this is the team's view of the same system. Same system. Different position. Nothing new was added. Nothing was removed. I will tell you, in all my experience, when I get into rooms with leaders, this is where it usually gets very, very uncomfortable in the room. Because everyone starts going. It gets a little quiet. I say it as the air gets sucked out of the room. Because when leaders see something like this side by side, Mark, I want to ask you, what do they start to often jump to naming? What do they try to do immediately when they see something like this?
Well, I think just in my own experience, our first instincts and probably what you're trying to articulate there as far as it gets a little bit uncomfortable is now we start pointing fingers at each other. I think when I saw that first graph that you had put up and now you see this one, I would immediately, if I'm in the room seeing this play out, is probably people pointing fingers, because the leader's view was probably, this is the way I told you guys to do it, and they're not doing it right, to put it in simple terms. And we're saying, hey, we're doing everything right, but there's processes that are broken, and you don't really understand kind of what's going on in our world, because it seems like the first and the second are just completely disconnected. And so I think that just sets a stage up to have a very frank conversation as far as, our workload is too much. That's why, we're probably doing some reworks. Some of the processes are good, but at the end of the day, you don't get it.
Yeah. And, the thing is, when we rush to label or reconcile it as in, hey, and name somebody, point a finger, right? What do we stop seeing? Is we stop seeing the gap in what people are seeing, right? Mm-hmm. How they're perceiving that same problem. And so what I'm trying to ask the audience here is, what label do you tend to reach for, right? When tension's visible but not yet understood, what is sort of the default action here, the default behavior that comes here? John Lane says it means there's some assumed weakness in the business. Yeah, there's something happening here. You can visually see it already, but you don't have to wait for the numbers to show up. That's the goal of the whole episode, right? So I want you to stay with that just for a couple moments, right? And what you were just kind of feeling there, because this is where the recognition that happens in that room, people start to see the distances and the gaps that happen between each one of those different, the different answers, right? They notice where there's crossing, they notice where the tension is. But the important part here is to just not name it yet. Right? Cyril, I'll ask you a question. When multiple people start seeing that, so we saw that team view and that individual leader view. Let's say we put this in front of a team. We don't actually put labels or names on top of it. Multiple people in that room see what that looks like visually. What changes in that conversation?
it depends what is the atmosphere of the company anyway. But like Mark was saying, is like the blaming the others kind of game anyway. So it's like, oh, who's doing wrong, or who's doing right, and it's your fault, it's my fault. So the thing is, again, it's having been in on these shoes for a long time in the corporate world, when you've got very large team or small team or different marketing, sales, and whatever it is. Team spirit is very important for me, because that's where you build the future of the company. So if you've got tension and someone is instead of taking ownership, we were talking about it, and taking action, saying, okay, I was wrong. Maybe like Mark was saying, process is not great, so we can improve it. I was wrong on this one. Maybe we need to work more in a more collaborative kind of way with the sales. You were talking about sales, delivery, customer success, and because, to be honest, we were talking about, John was talking about, the SaaS, and how many clients are you losing on a monthly basis, weekly basis? It's the most important one. It's everybody's business in the company. It doesn't matter what you do, and that's, for me, is like team spirit. Look at what does work, what doesn't work, and I'm not pointing people. We're pointing processes, and we're pointing the way we collaborate all together. So it would be my way to do things. But again, if the tension is very high, meaning revenue is very low, margin is very low, EBITDA is on the case, I mean, that the C-level will start to pointing people, usually anyway, because that's where it works. And then the board will be even worse than that. So that's where you need to get, and I'm a big sport guy. I play soccer for many years, and for me, it's like, you cannot have one guy scoring the goals. It's not enough. You need 11 people working and doing the same thing to the same, and guiding to the same direction.
Yeah.
So that's my two cents on it.
I mean, if you look at this for a moment, and I would love to hear from, remember, you can go down to those 3x3 matrix, the 9 dots, bottom right corner, if you want to put something into the Q&A. I'd love your comments or any questions. If we look at that tension, and Mark, I want to direct this towards you, this process efficiency or this load, look at the distance between these things. So if this darker line is the leader, and the rest of the team is this gray, remember, this is not about right or wrong. This is what they're assuming in terms of load. This leader is starting to say, hey, they've got some more capacity. We're managing that pretty well. They've got more capacity. The rest of the team saying, whoa, hold on a second. I can't burn more hours. On process efficiencies, CEO saying, hey, you guys are just doing a lot of busy work. And the team is saying, we are cranking out as fast as we can, right? What happens here, Mark? And I'm going to hop up forward 2 slides, get us back on track, but I'd love to hear what you think in terms of when you start to see this tension, what potentially occurs here?
Well, I think what occurs is opening up a conversation that you probably wouldn't naturally have in a weekly meeting or even a QBR, as far as just what's going inside the business. It's like, a checkup with your doctor, and there's certain things that, you might notice in a regular checkup, whether it's a metabolic panel or your blood pressure, and you just kind of notice that, hey, what's going on here? Maybe we should have a conversation about this, that, and the other. And I think that particular graph opens up the opportunity to start having natural conversations about what is going on. So like you've been saying, it's not about labeling. It's not about saying something's right or wrong. It's really about being efficient or inefficient. And I think that just also helps at least signal to the leaders of the business that there's an opportunity to maybe even bring more people into the conversation, as we recognize that there's an inefficient process or just a simple disagreement about how we view a certain state of the business. So I think that the potential outcomes of this are certainly fantastic, because that was, as mentioned before, these internal frictions start to percolate and bubble up at the external level. And if you're able to nip it in the bud early on, that's really the goal of any business, I think, is every business is going to have inefficiencies, but it's how soon do you diagnose these inefficiencies before they become huge problems on the external side and then potentially relate to churn.
Yeah. So I think that leads, directly into this, right? Nothing that's dramatic, right? It hasn't been showing up. People aren't fighting or in the hallways or anything. Stuff is just still rolling, but it's persistent. It's under the surface, right? It's like looking at a calm lake. There's a bunch of fish swimming underneath. There's lots of activity, but the waters on top look nice and serene. And it's also the moment that the language starts to form around these tensions. People start having private conversations about what's happening, right? Starts bubbling. I tell you, probably politics starts a lot from this, right? I think this is the part, right? We're starting to be able to see underneath the surface of the water, right? We're starting to see what's happening. The quarter hasn't closed yet, right? We're still marching towards that. So here's what I want you to think about, right? What forms next? We'll revisit this. That's expected at our size, and that's just this quarter. Right? The language starts to show up before the resolution. It makes friction livable. And when the friction becomes livable, urgency sort of fades. Cyril, have you ever seen this sequence happen before?
Yeah, it depends. Usually, you've got this kind of, I would say, behavioral language anyway, when the pressure is not on the financial side, meaning revenue, margin, profit, etc. So, we're still living in the good side. I mean, everyone is happy. It's just a quarter, we'll do better next quarter. We still have, if you're in Q1, if you take tech, Q1 is only 10% of the yearly revenue. So, hey, you know what? We've got 3 quarters to catch up and do better. But and that's where usually you need to regroup. Because for me, saying that we will revisit next quarter, or it's just a quarter, usually there is something more profound. And the issue should be, like Mark was saying, let's talk about it. It's not about saying there is something good or bad, or, XYZ is doing not his job. It's not about that. It's what do we do to get the company doing better, more efficiently? It's not about making more hours or less hours. It's to be efficient. And efficiency is the most important thing. Is, when people say, I want to be present 9 hours. No. Let's do 2 hours, but 200% is better than 50% in 9 hours. It makes no sense to do more time. The hours doesn't count. The efficiency, the quality of the job is the most important one. So let's have a conversation about, what we need to revisit, what we need to change or improve. And I don't like the change, because I know change, people are really, really scared when you say change. You say, oh my God, I was doing this and now they would ask me to do something else. No, let's improve what we do and improve as a team level, not at the individual level. It's not about the individual here. It's about the company. And we're all in the same boat. So let's do something to work. So yes, I've seen that. And usually when they're starting to do that, they don't want to see the truth. Simple. And they just want to walk away from the issue, thinking maybe it will fix by itself, by magical.
I've heard a phrase many times, right? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, but it's not always the squeaky wheel that needs the grease, right? We now start to find the one that's not squeaking. Mm. So this is kind of the scenario that plays out, right? Weeks 2 to 4, you start to have decision bounces. We'll start to revisit delivery slips. And that's the first set of symptoms that you see. And then week 12, you start to see margin variance. You start to see that finance review. And this is usually the meeting where finance starts to explain what's going to happen in the past. The numbers have now been written in stone because they have now been done. But the friction formed under the surface before you saw the ripples on the surface. I want to start talking about what happens next, right? So the thing is, different people, different roles, same diagnostic, right? They saw the same thing, but the shapes and some of the shapes, they begin to resemble each other. They've got some things that look the same, some things that look different. Mark, when you've seen this happen across leaders, what happens to shift in the room if they see things similarly or if they see things differently? What does that kind of start to, I think this kind of leads into what you both have been saying all this time, right? It starts to focus us in on the conversation that really actually needs to happen, as opposed to the one that we just kind of skirt by because we can't witness it yet.
Yeah, I think if you get similar leaders in the room, different people, but the shapes are different, then obviously that points to just misalignment in general. And probably back to kind of what I was saying before is that a lot of these identifications or these symptoms aren't part of just natural conversations, because typically the conversations happen at the end of the quarter, as you were saying, with somebody, the CFO. We're talking about the numbers, we're talking about the past, and we're not talking about the current state, and we're not talking about how to improve to get any better. Those are the conversations which I've seen. They don't happen organically. There's some organizations that do that, and they're aware that, hey, maybe we could get better. As Cyril was saying, could some of this information help you get better? And I think even some of the pictures that I'm painting, or at least that I've been saying, is that we typically wait for things to explode. But what if we're doing just okay? What if we're just getting by? Our goal was 10% this quarter and we hit 11, and that's great, and everyone just kind of moves on down the road. But what if there was an opportunity for improving those efficiencies, improving some of the dynamics on the team, making sure that the executive leaders are all aligned, and that we're also aligned with everybody that's downstream from the organizational chart perspective? Could those numbers look like 20%, 30%? And what's holding us back? And the only thing that's holding us back is not being aware of some of our inefficiencies in our business. So to me, I think that that's radically important.
So John Lane, who has commented, has used a term before with me. He said, Vinay, there's so many jobs to be done, right? The fact is, those jobs to be done are not happening the way they're expected to be done because people see them differently. I want to kind of start to move us closer towards the end here as we get closer to our time, right? But this is the line that most leaders cross too late, right? Nothing new was introduced, nothing was hidden. The patterns were already there, lurking underneath the surface. It's just that it wasn't visible before, and now you've seen what that potentially looks like. And I want to spend a little bit of time here because this isn't about culture, right? This isn't about individuals. This isn't about opinion, and it isn't really about hindsight either. This is all about what is actually happening in the system right now. It's that smell that you get in your car because a wire has been burning for a long time. All of a sudden you smell it, and you then take it into the mechanic or the repair shop to get it done because now you're starting to smell it. It's starting to get to a bad state. What if I could get to it before that wire burned and I had to replace something for $800 in my system because a simple wire burned, right? That's what we have here, is the opportunity to start to see it. It's the system as it is before the numbers move. And it's the part that we usually skip, but it's been hard to measure. It's been hard to see in the past. So when we see this, right, we see that the operational friction forms long before the results move. Finance is going to be explaining that late because it measures outcomes, not the actual signals. And the leaders can feel the gap, but they just can't justify it. So, Cyril, when you look at these three together, these three statements here, which one of these do you think tends to get underestimated most often? Mark, I'd love to hear from you as well.
I mean, that's the start of our conversation, diagnosis, because people scared to do it. Because it's like, oh, you're coming into my company, taking any advice, outside advice, and to say, let me help you to see, what works and what doesn't work. And people always scared of that. Don't look into my business. I don't want you, to get the. They're just scared about what could be the outcome of the diagnosis, and usually that's always the same thing. So for me, if you are very focused on the diagnosis, then you improve, then that the financial result will be there anyway. So that's really why we need to be focused. And like Mark was saying, you're talking about finance, it's too late. You can't change the past anyway. You can change, don't spend your time on the past. Past is done, complete. You cannot change it. So let's be focused on the present to get your future even better and better and better. So diagnosis first, and then based on that, don't be scared, don't be afraid. Take it as a good and positive exercise with your team. Anybody, and I should say, sorry, not anybody, everybody of the team. Anyway, everyone from the company, and then take the outcome of the diagnosis and work on the improvement. So, yeah, diagnosis.
Mark, I'm going to come back to you in a second here. I want to kind of get us closed because we're getting really close on time here, and I think the conversation has been rolling quite nicely, which I like. So I want to make a quick clarification here. Nothing's being sold. The session stands on our own. Observation is the point, not intervention, right? And this is the question I want you to start to think about, right? Once you or any leader starts seeing this, what usually changes in how you can pay attention or what they can pay attention to before they even act, right? You're now starting to see beneath the surface of that lake, if you will. So thing I'd like you to start to think about is what might you notice this week, right? Now that this lens is available, even if nothing changes, what can you just now start to see? A decision returning instead of being resolved. Language that just often softens the tension. And a gap someone feels that can't really be justified. I think all that fits under this category, what I'll call gut feel. And Mark and Cyril, I'd love to, in a couple moments here, I'd like to hear some sort of closing thoughts from you. Once you see that tension that exists and how people have different sets of assumptions of the same exact system, it's hard to unsee it. So before we close, I want to bring this down to an individual level, not your company, not your team, where you're already feeling friction, right? That doesn't yet have numbers attached to it yet, right? It hasn't shown up. You're getting to it before it shows up at the end of the quarter. This is where something feels tight, even though everything feels stable, where you're explaining something internally that you don't fully believe yet. Because again, once you see it, it's hard to unsee. The numbers will catch up. The signal is already here. It's already building. I want to give everyone an opportunity here. For those who want to go one level deeper, there's a friction map live is here to give you access to this core diagnostic. It's a structured version of what you just experienced, how you can see what that friction looks like. It's a map of how friction is forming in your system before the results move. And for attendees who come here, there's this QR code or that URL. You can scan that and you can actually take that diagnostic for yourself for the next week. Because if you're mapping your own system feels useful, that's what the link is for. There's no follow-up or sequence. There's no sales. It's just a structured observation of what is there. It's completely optional. Closeout. Cyril, Mark. Cyril, I'll go to you first. Or Mark, actually, I think I ended with Cyril. Mark, I'll start with you first. Closing thoughts, comments. What changes now that you're able to see this? Any kind of pull this together for me in your own words.
Yeah, even if you're in a business and you recognize that there might be friction, how are you pinpointing where that friction is coming from? And as you were saying before, is it just a gut feel as far as what you think the problems are? And without any sort of way to really map it out, without no pun intended there, but unless you know where to target and you know which one is the highest priority, then you'll just continually be guessing as far as what the problems are, and it will be a gut feel, and most likely it will probably be wrong. And the measures that you take in order to solve those gut feel problems will probably be more money spent in the wrong places.
As the organization scales, and I found this personally, right? Gut feel doesn't scale, right? Gut feel only scales to the vision that you have. But as your organization starts to scale, you can't have gut feel and things that you can't interact with on a regular basis. Cyril, how does that resonate with you? Any closing thoughts or comments from your side?
No, I like what Mark just said. And for me, it's like, when you are CEOs and C-level or SMBs, you've got the pressure from the board. You've got the pressure from investors. We know money is very important. And so you're very focused on dollars, numbers, like you were saying, and not on the, saying that something is wrong, something needs to be improved. And you don't want to know. My gut feeling is they don't want to know, because it's something you will dig out and show to the world that something is wrong with your company, and there is always something good to improve. So don't be scared. Use a diagnostic, understand, because if you got a gut feeling, what like Mark was saying, it means there's something even maybe deeper. So let's dig out, get your help, get the help you need, and then again, is better to catch this kind of issue very early in the game, because when you scale and when the company is growing, maybe it could be too late, and then the problem will be too big to fix. So,
yes, well, thank you everyone who joined in. Hopefully this was a good use of time. You got a new set of prescription lenses to see something that happens in every organization, because Cyril, as I think you said at the top of the call, this is not something that has anything to do with GCC or anywhere else. This is not a people problem. It's a systemic problem across all organizations. So thank you for taking some time joining in. Hopefully it gave you a new set of lenses on how to see things. Mark, Cyril, thank you for your time. I appreciate you sharing some experiences and some insights on this conversation.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Bye.
the day. Bye.
Bye.